Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to another session of Indian Economy Essentials. And in today's session, let's try to understand what is this concept of the US debt default. Very recently in most of the newspapers, there is this discussion whether government of USA will default on its debt and what is the likely implications or what are the repercussions if there is at all any default like this by the government of USA. Now let's start with the basics here. Just like government of India, even government of USA incurs expenditures. In case of India, government of India comes out with a union budget, and in the union budget government will provide for expenditure as well as sources of income in the form of receipts. And generally what you see is the expenditures are greater than receipts. That is, government of India, just like most of the governments around the world, spends more money compared to how much does it earn. In the same way, apply the logic to government of USA. Government of USA also spends more money than how much it is earning. And especially in the last couple of years, its expenditure has been much higher compared to the revenue or compared to the income. And I'm pretty sure all of you know what is the reason behind it. The reason is very simple: impact of the pandemic. Now, point number 2, when you know that expenditure is greater than the income, let's take a simple number here. Imagine you are the president of USA. You are supposed to spend, let's say, $100, but your income through all the sources is just, let's say, $70. Now, how is that possible that you spend $100 by collecting only $70? It's not possible. So what you will do is, you will end up borrowing from the market. You will borrow from the market, just like what government of India does. So government of USA will also borrow from the market, and this borrowing is nothing but the debt of the government of USA. It is nothing but the debt of the government of USA. Now, in case of India, we have various conditions in what way government is allowed to borrow, how much is the limit as per FRBM, etc., etc. In the same way, in USA, it is the Congress of USA which will decide what will be the debt limit allowed for the government. I repeat, in case of USA, it is the Congress. What is Congress? Congress is basically the two houses, that is the House of Representatives and the Senate House. The Senate as well as the House of Representatives comprises, or both of them put together, is the Congress in USA. So it is this Congress which will fix how much is the debt limit allowed for the government. Now imagine in this year, the debt limit decided is $20, but the government there requires actually $30. I hope you understand my point. Although the numbers are generally given in terms of trillions of dollars, no need to buy out all of that data, just simplify it. What I'm saying is, you are allowed to have a debt of $20, but you need to borrow how much? $30. How is that possible? So what the government needs to do is borrow more, but the debt limit is much lower than how much is the borrowing required or total amount of borrowing requirements of the government. In this context, what the Congress must do is increase the debt limit so that the government in USA, that is the president-led government of USA, will be allowed to borrow more. This is, in simple terms, how in USA the Congress will determine the debt or the debt limit and what is the impact of that on the government expenditure. Now imagine, the Congress in USA does not change the debt limit. That is, they have already decided you are supposed to have so much amount of a debt and you already have reached that particular debt level. In that particular context, what will happen? If they have decided, let's say, you are supposed to have a debt level of $100 billion, the debt already borrowed by the government is $100 billion. Historically, the total amount of debt that you have is $100 billion. Now, will you be allowed to borrow more? No, that's not possible. And if you're not allowed to borrow more, what will happen to your expenditures? Your expenditures will be affected. Now let me show you certain data. You don't need to by heart it. Why there is so much of discussion about this government or the likelihood of the government to on defaulting of the debt? This is the reason. If you look at this particular graph, you will realize that from 1966, the debt of the government, the total federal debt of the government has been increasing. The limit that has been decided has been increased. The last time the limit was increased by the Congress was in 2021. And as per the data, the government is allowed to have a debt of $31 trillion. It is in terms of dollars and that too in terms of trillion. It is allowed to have a total debt of $31 trillion. Now, based on that, you are allowed to borrow from the market. And as per the government data itself, that is as per the government of USA, in the month of January itself, the amount of debt of government of USA has already reached $31 trillion. Now, many of you will have a doubt here. That is, sir, if they already have reached the limit of $31.4 trillion debt in the month of January, how are they able to spend money now? Because as per your explanation, they should not be able to spend money. There is a reason they are able to spend the money. Have a look at this. As per the data that has been published, what is the government or the machinery of the government? What they are doing is, they have started implementing certain extraordinary measures wherein, no doubt, they have already reached the debt limit of $31.4 trillion. But what they have done is, they have allocated certain expenditures for other projects rather than allocating for certain projects. What do you mean by this? Let's imagine certain amount of dollars were allocated for development of infrastructure project. But rather than spending this money on infrastructure project, now these dollars have been used for other expenditures. This is basically the extraordinary measures that have been incorporated by the government machinery in USA. Even though reaching the debt limit, they are able to incur the expenditure. But as per various data sets or as per the government officials itself, even these extraordinary measures, it will get exhausted in the beginning of June. Where in the month of May, in the beginning of the June, even this measure will be exhausted. And once you exhaust this measure, that is, there is no more dollars available for its deviation for other expenditures, then basically government will not be allowed to borrow any amount of money. It will lead to default by the government. That is, government is not able to spend money now because they have reached the debt limit. Now they have no money to deviate for other purposes, for expenditure purposes. Now they are not even allowed to borrow from the market. This is basically the concept of US debt default. And if you just look at it, there is one more very important parameter that has been provided here. What is the total debt as a percentage of GDP? The total debt as a percentage of GDP has kept on increasing, and as per the latest data provided, it is 120% of the GDP. That is, the debt of the government of USA, it is 120% of the GDP level. And that is the precise reason there have been calls from the opposition parties, that is the Republican Party in USA, for the government to cut down its expenditure. And that is the basic idea of US debt level, default, etc. Now let's say there is a default by the USA government. What are the implications of it? What are the repercussions if the government of USA will default on its debt? And when I say default on its debts, please understand, the government will incur expenditure. That point should be very clear to you now. Government needs to incur expenditure. But to incur expenditure, they do not have any money. They are not allowed to borrow also. So in that particular case, some of the expenditures such as, let's say, repayment of loans, payment of interest on some of the loans, etc. will also be defaulted. The government will not be able to pay salaries to the defense, will not be able to spend money, etc. That is basically the meaning of the term debt default here. Now what are the implications? One, it will have a huge impact and will create market volatility. It will create market volatility. That is, investors will start losing confidence. That is also second point here. Investors will start losing confidence on this market. And the reason is very simple here. Government of USA is defaulting on a repayment. Now you tell me, if you're an investor, will you have more confidence on an economy where the government is defaulting on the payment? Government doesn't have money to spend. Of course no. So it will lead to loss of investor confidence, one. It will create a lot of volatility in the market, second. And if the investors are losing confidence, don't you think the capital cost, that is any loans that you want to borrow, because the risk is higher now, investors basically look at the market and they allocate a higher risk now to the market because the government is defaulting. Don't you think it will become very difficult to raise capital? And even if you raise capital, the cost, that is the interest associated with the capital, will be higher. And the fourth very important repercussion regarding, let's say, the debt default of the US government is that it might lead to downgrading of sovereign credit rating of USA. It might lead to a downgrade in the credit rating. So these are certain very important points associated with the US government debt default that could be happening. Again, there is a likelihood that that would happen, but if anything that the history has taught us, it is not the first instance that there is a danger of a debt default. Even in the previous situations also, there have been certain issues related to that. That is, the two parties, that is the Democratic Party as well as the Republican Party, based on who is the president, the opposition party has always dragged this particular discussion, to the last moment. So it is not the first time that there is a concern of the US debt default. Generally also, there have been many instances where very close by to the date of the default, certain agreements have been arrived at. So based on this discussion, I have given a MCQ here. What are the likely implications of government defaulting on the debt? Improvement in the credit rating? No. Of course, this is not going to lead to improvement in the credit rating. Credit rating can be downgraded. Cost of borrowing will fall in the market. No, that is also wrong. Loss of investor confidence. Third one is correct. So the right option for the question is option A, only 3 is correct. So these are the various aspects related to the concept of US government likely defaulting on its debt come the month of June. If you like these initiatives, please hit the like button. Provide your valuable comments in the section below. And if you yet to subscribe to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS YouTube channel, do it right now. Thank you. Have a great day.